What's up everyone, Lance Hedrick here, and today we're going to be looking at the new 64mm SSP Cast BURR. Alright, so some of you may be watching this and wondering, why am I doing a video on this one BURR? Well, it's simple. This is likely the most hyped up BURR that I've heard of in the past year or so. People have been really excited about its release. Now, you might be wondering, what about it is so special? Well, we're going to trace back to, I don't know the actual years, but we're going to trace back to when Ditting was making the Ditting 804 at the very beginning. All right, they were creating cast BURRs that had a very unique geometry about them. And over time, they switched over to machine. But then, in the early 2010s, I believe it was, when the Multipurpose Peak came out, the Peak actually took that original Ditting 804 BURR that was cast, and they put it into a new Espresso grinder, the Multipurpose Peak. And Kyle Ramage was a part of this and was telling me some of the backstory. But at that time, Ditting also kind of transitioned back to this reshaped Ditting 804 BURR. Now I know some of you are hearing this and are like, oh my goodness, I don't care about all of that. Well, that's fine, but I'm gonna go ahead and show you. Now this is not exactly the Ditting BURR. This is a special machined version that has a coating on it, but this will show you what the Ditting BURRs look like. Whoops, so we'll do it over here. So as you see, and again, this is a different color. It would typically be cast in there in this big Ditting grinder right now. I didn't want to have to take the BURR out for the shoot, so I got this one, a special one that a friend gave me who works at Himro. But as you see, it is a copy. So it's a 64mm copy of this original 80mm BURR that is found in the Ditting Lab Suites, the Ditting 807s. This is the Ditting filter that I have here. I'll have a video coming out in 1 week from the release of this one. But yeah, so this is what the geometry of that Ditting BURR looks like. So it was a revamped, deeper cuts, a little bit of different geometry from that original Ditting 804. And now Hansung at SSP has created a 64mm version. Of course, this is machined, it's not cast, but the idea is to give you something similar to that suite profile that came from the Ditting Lab Suites. Okay, so what I've done is an exhaustive, and when I say exhaustive, I mean exhaustive, tasting in order to figure out my thoughts on this in comparison to, say, the SSP Multipurpose BURR, to the actual Ditting Lab Suites in a Ditting grinder itself, against the 64mm Gorilla Gear BURRs, and against one of my favorite grinders, the Bentwood, because it's 63 mils and it has a similar flavor profile, as I said in that video, linked right there, which I said is related to the Ditting Lab Suite. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just talk to you about how I approached this tasting. So of course my main desire was to nail the filter profile for all of these BURRs, because that is the #1 thing the Ditting Lab Suite was known for, is creating beautiful filter coffees. And the Dittings are actually used in a lot of labs, coffee labs, roasteries, for cupping procedures and for high precision when people are dialing in their roasts. So it's a BURR that's really known for a lot of sweetness, a lot of body, and a little bit of clarity. So the way I went about this tasting was I wanted to spend a lot of time on how filter coffee tastes from all of these different BURRs. So what I did is every round I pitted cast BURR against one of these other BURRs. So I have 2 odes at home. I brought a lot of grinders for today's shoots. I didn't want to bring too many, but at home I put these all the 64 mils in the Fellow Ode when I was doing filters. So I had 2 Fellow Odes, and I had the SSP Multipurpose in one, and I had the cast BURRs in the other. Then I did Gorilla Gears in one, cast BURRs in the other. I did the Bentwood versus the cast BURRs, and then I did the Ditting Lab Suite versus the cast BURRs. Now, I'm going to have down in the caption a link to my observations and some of the conclusions that I came from, because I don't want to bore you with how much notes I took during these cuppings, but I'm going to go ahead and kind of break down what happened, and then we'll do one live cupping here. But for those people who are really curious about each of these comparisons, I do have time cues down below, so you can skip forward to ones that are more relevant to your home situation. So the first one that I did was I pitted the cast BURRs up against the actual Ditting Lab Suite, and this is what we will do live later in the film, which of course will be in the cues below. But when I was tasting them at home, I would brew 2 filter cups, and I did 5 rounds of this with all different coffees and different recipes, okay? So I did about I don't know, it was a lot. I did maybe 20, 24, 28 or so, I don't know. It was a lot of brews on this comparison. So what I did is I would brew a filter cup with a Kono dripper. I did one on each, same exact recipe, same temperature. I actually used 2 different kettles so that as I was pouring the water out and the temperature was changing, it was changing evenly in both. So I brewed 2 cups, and I did it multiple times because I know that there's error in brewing. But anyway, and then I would take it and I split it up into 3 cups each. So I had 6 cups on a table, and 3 of them I labeled as the cast burr. I'd label it with a C. And so then I would have my wife switch it up, then I would switch it up, and my wife switch it up just to make sure it was double, triple blind. So I had no idea where the coffees were. And then I would go through and taste, and I would try to separate based off of taste which one I preferred, which one I thought had a better expression of the coffee itself. And every single time, except for maybe 2 runs, I got all 3. I got all of them right. There were 2 runs where one of the ones that I chose as my favorite was the opposite burr. So, that's a really impressive track to hit all that. And what is shocking is on these, at varying extraction levels, varying ratios, different coffees from naturals to washed. I know naturals, me drinking it crazy, to washed coffees, and even I threw in a carbonic maceration geisha in the mixed. Even amongst all of those, I consistently chose as my preference when tasting blindly the cast burrs from SSP. Now, it makes sense though when I start to describe to you the differences in the flavors. So on the cast burrs, there was more acidity, more of a punchy acidity and clarity about it than with the Ditting Lab sweets. The sweetness, to me, and sweetness in coffee is a very contested thing. It's a highly argued, I guess, highly debated as to what that even means, since there's no sugar really present in coffee. And I'll link Smrke, a professor out in Switzerland, who talks about this. But I perceive a higher sweetness actually with the SSPs than I do with the Ditting Lab sweets. Now I'm sure there are people who will say otherwise, but the body was bigger with the Ditting Lab sweet burrs, but everything else I tended to prefer on the cast. Now here's the thing though, is whenever you continue to push the extraction, when I was pushing it higher and higher up to 23.5%, there was an unpleasant bitterness that kind of lingered with this as I continued to push the extraction higher and higher. So there's an astringency that was there that was not pleasant. Now moving on, the next round I did was the multipurpose versus the cast burrs. Now this one was way different, but I want to go ahead and share my bias. I am obsessed with high clarity coffees, and here I did not miss a single one out of the multiple trials I did. It was not even close in my mind. This one had such a higher clarity, such a higher delineation of flavor, such a higher complexity. To me it was floral on all of them. It made them all just so clear and clean, and I'm a huge sucker for the multi-purpose burrs. They're still my favorite for filter coffee out of these options here. But this one did a really good job still. It was parallel almost to the results of this to this, of the 64 cast to the 80 cast. The difference there is almost like the difference here, whereas this would now be the cast and this would be the 80, if that makes sense. So this one had a lot higher clarity, it had a lot more of a punch, it had a lot more of that kind of perceptible sweetness for me because of how it was hitting everything and it had a better balance. This one though had a much bigger body and it had more of a depth to it, I guess. But and arguably this one may have been more well balanced because this was a very thin body in comparison. So overall, it's difficult to say, but this one was my preference, the multi-purpose from SSP. Next, I did it against the Gorilla Gear burrs, and so we'll talk about that just briefly. This one, this was actually a pretty close head-to-head competition. This versus Gorilla Gear. I did end up picking this the majority of the time, though I would say it was more like 80% of the time I was getting it right out of the 6 cups. There was a similar sweetness, a similar acidity. This one had better body. So that was the biggest distinguishing feature when I was cupping to tell the difference. And that's how I got about 80% correct on those blind tastes, is I was looking for body over everything. And this one did take the cake. Now, the final one was this versus the Bentwood. Now, like I linked earlier, I love the Bentwood. I made a 45-minute video on the Bentwood, and so I was really curious to see how these would stack up against one another. This one was by and far the closest matchup. The Bentwood actually had more sweetness, and the bodies were pretty similar, but I'm going to give it to Bentwood as well. Everything else, though, I gave to the cast burrs. So it was almost a 50-50 on which I preferred, depending on how cool the samples were, depending on how high the extraction was. There was a lot of different things to take into consideration here, but they were very close. I can't say which one I prefer because every coffee was a little bit different. So this with the Bentwood making filter coffee and these making filter coffee are going to give you kind of similar cups. So similar that I had a difficulty telling them apart, whether it was a natural coffee, a washed coffee, African coffee, Central American coffee, South American, whatever it was, they were very similar. Okay, so again, I have all that information and more words, because I'm wordy, down below. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to quickly brew 2 cups of coffee, and we're just going to taste these live. I'm going to do the Ditting Lab Sweet versus the Fellow Ode, which has these in it. And I'm going to have those prepared once I clap, and we'll transition to them fully brewed. All right, so I just finished brewing these 2. Now, I brewed a naturally processed pink bourbon from Colombia, roasted by Regalia. This was one of the coffees that I used in my testings, and so I thought I'd go ahead and bring this out as well today because I ran out a lot of the other coffees I was using. Anyway, the way I'm brewing is 15 grams of coffee, 255 grams of water. I kept that constant with all of the coffees. The recipe would be 45-gram bloom, and then I would pour a second 45-gram, second bloom, and then I would pour all the way up to 255 grams without adding any manual agitation because I did not want it to be different from cup to cup. So on a couple of them, I would do that if I was trying to just explore different taste profiles with the coffee, but for the most part, I wanted to keep it as simple and as repeatable as possible. Anyway, so what I'm going to do is, as you see, I have these 3 bowls marked with a C, and then these 3 are blank. Boom. So the blank ones are going to be the Ditting Lab Sweet. I'm going to just do it just like I did at home. Whoop. And then the C is for cast, which even though the SSPs are not actually cast, they replicate the cast burrs. All right, let's make sure these are even. All right, so I'm going to mix them up real quick, and then I'm going to have Jason come and mix them up as well, and that way, and then I might mix them up one more time for good measure. That way we can have a really nicely blinded tasting. And here we go. Sherry, baby, Sherry, won't you come on tonight? Pretty good. All right, let's give this a little taste. We'll see. We'll see if I can do it live on camera. All right, let's check it. These are the ones I preferred. I'm going to think these are the cast. We got 1 cast. I don't know if you can see it. I don't know. No cast. And a cast. So I was hesitating. Let's see where the other cast is. Yep, on the first one. There it is. All right, I'm going to do it one more time as the coffee cools, because it gets a lot easier once it's cool and it's really hot. It's hard to perceive the acidity. But I got 2 of 3, not bad. We're going to try once more. So let me get these back. And if you can keep your eyes on the prize, you can. I'm too good at this. I should be on the streets hustling people for money. All right, now Jason's going to come switch them up. And I better get them all right this time, or this is embarrassing. Maybe I'll take longer this time to ensure that I get them right. That'll be... All right. Let's do it. Oh no, I'm starting to double guess. I'm starting to second guess myself. This one I'm confident of. Confident of this. Confident of that. Confident of that. It's these two. I don't know why. They're all the same coffee. I'm just going to stick with my original. All right. Let's see. Ditting Lab Sweet. Cast. Ditting Lab Sweet. I'm 2 of 3 again. And this was the one. I should have kept it the way it was. Well, both times I chose 2 cast. We'll do it one more time because I want to get all 3. And I feel like you could still say it's luck getting 2 out of 3 2 times in a row. So we'll do 3, and then maybe if I get 2 of 3 or 3 of 3, it'll be more believable. This will be the last time. And okay. All right, last time, swear. I swear. This is it. This is the final countdown as I'm looking at the spice rack back here. Rosemary, oregano, honey. Oh. And then, I don't know, other stuff up here, coffee stuff. I'm going to get jazzed right now. I have so much coffee in me. This is hard. All right. Three of 3. Okay. So yeah, that time we did it. We have cast on the back. Or cast up front. We have dittings on the back, and yeah. All right, so third time I was able to do that. So the biggest thing I was looking for was just vibrancy of acidity, and then a lack of kind of I don't know, I was looking for vibrance of acidity, and I was looking for kind of cohesion in those flavors that could be referred to, I guess, as sparkly. So looking at silky mouthfeel as opposed to like a heavy mouthfeel, I was looking for balance between the sweetness and the acidity. And these back here, it had a great weight to it. But it wasn't as balanced as these. Now, I am a huge fan of the Ditting Lab Sweets. Don't get me wrong, huge fan. I just think this is more in my alley, I guess. So this is, like I said, based off of an old school style of burr from the original iteration of the Ditting 804. So it's made for kind of that traditional style of coffee that people think of, big body and sweet. And so, anyway, what I'm going to quickly pivot to is the espresso side of things. Let me just tell you, I'm not going to be making a lot of espresso on here because it's hard to judge a grinder or a Burrs on espresso because there's so many different avenues you can go. So I did do a lot of espresso tasting, and here's my quick and easy conclusions about it. I was able to successfully choke out my Breville Dual Boiler with the flow control mod. I did a blooming shot and was able to completely choke it, so it can get as fine as you want. Now with really light coffees, there was a coffee that was a super lightly washed Honduran from Madcap that I was not able to choke the machine doing a blooming shot, but I was able to get 9 bar no problem. So you can do that. I did it on the DF64 and I put the Burrs inside of that. So You can make espresso with it, and it's quite good. It has more body than the multi-purpose Burrs, but it has that clarity that you might be missing with some of the other Burrs, like the high uniformity. So just know that it can do espresso. I'm sorry for rushing through that last little bit so quickly, but as I said, it's really hard to qualify espresso whenever there's so many different ways of pulling, so many different styles, so many different preferences of people. I just wanted to be able to tell you that this does do espresso. So if you hear people saying that it doesn't go fine enough, yes it does. It can do it in the Ode, it can do it with the DF64, it can do it with the P64, whatever, pick your poison. Anyway, my overall conclusions of this Burr, I think I've said enough. I really, really enjoy it. It will not, for me personally, it will not be replacing the multi-purpose Burr for my filter coffees. I think it just makes incredible coffees. For espresso though, I might actually prefer, I do prefer this over the multi-purpose for most style of shots, unless I'm looking for something with high clarity and low body. But this does a really great job. I highly recommend you get a pair of these if you have a 64mm grinder. And that includes any of these. Well, not this, obviously, that's 80 mils. But yeah, anyway, that was a lot of information. I thank you so much for watching the video. You know, hit the like, hit the subscribe, leave a comment below. I appreciate you all so much. Check out my Patreon to help me continue doing cool videos like this. Until the next time, I hope you brew something tasty, and cheers.